the main braiding.
Right. I just posted a new one today that I just found this morning. So there's a brand new picture on there.
Okay, maybe that's the one I saw today. Shannon has her family is the one that has been having the Bigfoot sightings, and she was telling me about a horse, something that was involved with the horse. Do you want to tell her about it, Shannon?
Well, this was during a period of time where they had different experiences with, they never saw him up close and personal, but they just felt it was a Bigfoot. But one morning they woke up and went to their barn, and they found their horse dead. He had strangled himself, and they had just automatically decided that he was so frightened, he was trying to get away from something and strangled himself in the process.
Huh. Strangled himself on like a lead rope or something?
Yeah.
Huh. That's
because
strange.
This was during a time where there weren't any chores done by nighttime. Then they didn't get done because everyone was afraid to go outside. Because this Bigfoot seemed, and if it was indeed a Bigfoot, this one, from what Shannon has told me, was angry.
Were you hearing noises at night?
Well, this happened to my mother when she was about 12.
Oh.
And it happened during the 60s here in Hillsdale County. Around the time, didn't you tell me, Amy, that we had UFO sightings here?
That was right around the time where there were tons of UFO activity. We were even in Time magazine because college students had reportedly seen a UFO out of their dorm window.
Huh.
And there was just numerous UFO. And I know that you say that, which I find this very fascinating. I find it fascinating that the UFO and the Bigfoot go hand in hand.
Well, they do seem to. There are sightings of them together. And then there's just a lot of coincidences that become too coincidental. Where you have a lot of strange UFO activity right in the same area where you have Bigfoot activity. And it just becomes too much of a stretch to say that it's just coincidence.
Well, go ahead and tell her more, and maybe you can, just let us know if you think this sounds like a Bigfoot, experience. Tell her about the Bigfoot in the cornfield and the Bigfoot knocking someone out and the Bigfoot in the car.
Well, they were out in their garden behind their house working, and it got dark, so they started coming back towards the house to go in for the night, and their dog started growling at their shed, as if something was there that scared them. And then they saw something dart into the woods, something big. And then later on that evening, when it was dark, they saw a dark, huge figure in the cornfield across the street from their house. And there weren't any stumps or any big rocks or anything like that in that cornfield. This was something that was never there. And they were so scared that my grandma sat in her doorway with a gun on her lap, watching it to make sure it didn't come towards the house. Eventually she went to bed, and the next morning it was gone.
Well, there are a lot of sightings reported where people just see a dark shape. So, I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but it certainly could be Bigfoot.
Well, a few days later, my grandmother's boyfriend went outside for something, and he was gone a really long time. And eventually he came back, and he said that something hit him over the head and knocked him out.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a friendly encounter.
But all the encounters that my mom had told me about that happened at this time, they seemed very aggressive, which confused me because everything I heard about Bigfoot said that they try and stay away from people, they try and stick to themselves, and I wasn't sure.
Well, her encounters were all back in the 60s?
Yep.
Well, yeah, like 35 years ago, like in the 70s, it seems like there was a change in the behavior, at least the reported behavior of Bigfoot. There used to be reports of them shaking cars and scaring people, and occasionally attacking someone or waving a club at them threateningly. But then things kind of changed.
Yeah, right around that time, Shannon said one of them jumped on a car.
Right.
Was shaking it.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of reports from that time period like that around the country. So, and then it seems like they changed for some reason. And there haven't been any reports that I've heard about of them shaking cars recently. It seems like it's mostly people see them run across a road in front of them or run across a trail in the woods in front of them. And it's more chance encounters like that, just a fleeting thing than what it used to be.
Do you think it had to do with us spreading out and more into their territory?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of that question.
Oh, do you think it had to do more with like, urbanization and us spreading out more into their territory?
Well, you'd think that would make them more aggressive, but it's really very confusing as to why the behavior changed like that. But it seems to definitely have changed, and that's a mystery. Well,
tell her about the latest, the one in 97, because I'm really interested in this one.
My aunt and uncle in 1997 bought some property that's way back in the woods, surrounded on three sides by a river. So people generally didn't go onto that piece of property unless it was like hunting season or something. It was entirely uninhabited. And after they bought the property, they were going to build on it. But until they built, they put a little camper on there, and periodically would go over there and make a little bonfire and hang out at night. One night, shortly after they bought it, they heard the sound in the woods, and my aunt said that the closest thing she could come to describing it was that it sounded like an elephant with a colt. And it kind of scared them, and then they heard it trampling through the woods, breaking limbs, making lots of noise. And she said that it made that sound about 4 times. It would stop, make the sound. And it scared them so bad that they got in their car and drove away. But they had never encountered it again after that.
Yeah, there's a lot of sightings like that, where things are thrashing around in the woods and people don't get a good look at it, but they hear it.
What is the sound? Is that the sound, like a snorting loud?
Well, there are different sounds reported. Some people hear like a high-pitched scream. Some people hear whooping, and others have heard loud, snarling growls, things like that. So there's a wide range of sounds that people think are associated with Bigfoot.
Have you ever personally seen a Bigfoot?
I got a glimpse of something that might have been one. Not a good look. Last fall, I heard some ravens squawking very loudly and circling above the trees in the woods behind my house. So I went out to look, and I could see a clearing back in the woods. There's this little area, and the sun was shining into the clearing, and just this side of the clearing, there was a dark shape standing there. And as I watched, it turned sideways and went behind a tree. And it was taller than a bear, so it might have been a Bigfoot, but it wasn't a good, clear sighting.
Okay. And why is it that nobody has ever gotten a good sighting of a Bigfoot?
Well, there are people who get them. Not usually Bigfoot researchers, but witnesses report them. Where, it stands there and looks at them for a minute or two, In fact, last summer I had one reported to me where a man was out canoeing on a private lake in the UP, and he saw something on the shore, and he noticed that it was large and hairy, and it was kneeling by the water, drinking water using a concave piece of wood. And then this Bigfoot, it looked at him, and he looked at it, and they looked at each other for 20 or 30 seconds. Then it stood up and walked into the woods. So he got a pretty good look. He was kind of a good distance away, but he got a good long look at it anyway.
And what do you think is a Bigfoot? I was reading in the first, I couldn't get your book in time, but I did read that first chapter that's on the website. What's the name of the website, real quick? Where you buy the book? I can't have it.
Backyardbigfoot.com.
Yeah, Backyard. Yeah, and you have a little teaser chapter on there, and you talk about some people, the history of the evolution of man, but you don't feel that that's what it is.
Right, I have a whole chapter about evolution because I'm not a creationist, but I don't subscribe to the theory of evolution. There are too many problems with it. And when you look at what the ancient hominids looked like, which are the creatures that we were supposed to have evolved from, they look a lot more like descriptions of Bigfoot than they do us. You know, they have brow ridges, pronounced ridges above their eyes, and they have, you know, stocky bodies. And they just look a lot more like the Bigfoot than we do. So I think the Bigfoot are the descendants of those creatures, and we are not.
Okay. So, tell me, I have so many questions. I hope you don't mind, and I hope they're not stupid ones.
No.
Do you feel like, I know there's a lot of people out there researching and doing investigations of Bigfoot. Do you feel like there's a proper way to do an investigation of the Bigfoot?
I don't think there's one right way. I think whatever works for you is the way to do it. I personally don't think big expeditions are going to find much like these ones where they have 40, 50 people going out into the woods. You know, that's going to scare away any wildlife. And if I were a Bigfoot, I wouldn't want to hang around for that.
Oh, are you talking about the Michael Moneymaker one?
Right. Yeah, there's one coming to the UP. I just don't see them finding anything because they've got 50 people tromping around in the woods. And even if they break up into smaller groups, it's still a lot of people walking around with their two-way radios and a bunch of other equipment. And there's just no way they're going to be quiet enough to, you know, trick a Bigfoot into walking in front of them.
Yeah, and where do they go during the day?
Well, people see them in the daytime.
So they just kind of hang out?
Well, they probably walk around, you know, looking for food, hunting deer, you know, because there are sightings where people have seen them hunting deer or eating deer, carrying dead deer. So they're not vegetarians.
They're not.
Though they certainly, I'm sure they eat fruits and nuts and those kind of things, too.
Are they a type that mate for life?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are they a type that mate for life?
Well, nobody knows.
Okay.
There's just a lot we don't know. In fact, there's very little we do know for sure about Bigfoot.
Has anyone ever witnessed a mother and a child Bigfoot?
There have been people who thought they did. In fact, I had a sighting reported to me recently. It happened in the late 80s, but the gentleman just recently reported it where he and his brother saw 3 Bigfoot, and 2 of them were smaller than the other one, so he thought maybe they were 2 juveniles and an adult.
Okay. So are they, what is the word for it? Do they live alone or do they live in packs?
Well, again, we don't know.
Okay.
We can guess, and that's about it. Most of the time people see one at a time, but that doesn't necessarily mean they live alone. It just means when people encounter them, they're alone. But there have been sightings of more than one, so we just don't really know how they live.
Well, I have a caller that has called in and has been on hold. Are you up for taking questions?
Sure.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Who am I speaking with?
This is Nick from Ohio.
Hey, Nick. How are you?
Hey, I'm